So there are the front pages. I'm here with the Sunday Mirror's political editor Vincent Moss and Conservative MP Rehman Chishti to take a look through them. And as we saw there, one story dominating a number of the front pages, the arrest of the MP Nigel Evans. Here's the Mirror, for example. In fact, this is your article that you've written here, Vincent. Top Tory arrested for rape. And clearly there's not a great deal that we can say about this. Police investigations ongoing as we speak. But clearly news that has shocked people.
Very much so. Everybody I know in Westminster has been shocked about this. I mean, I was contacted about this at about 11 o'clock this morning by one of my sources who told me this. I couldn't believe it then. I wasn't sure it was true. I checked it with various other contacts, and it is the case. Very little we can say, other than it really has left everybody from Number 10 to Westminster to associates of Nigel Evans, who's the Deputy Speaker, a very important job at Westminster. There are three of them, just behind John Berger, the Speaker. Everybody's shocked, and police continue to investigate.
I've got to say, as a Deputy Speaker, he's been an excellent, fair Deputy Speaker, and from personal contact with Nigel, he's been an exceptionally nice guy in relation to the contact that I've had with Nigel. And of course, this is an inquiry, and there's a long way to go. And I've got to say that the principle of innocent until proven guilty, that the prison.
Yes, absolutely. And I can actually bring some breaking news regarding this story. I'm just being told that Nigel Evans has been released on police bail and will have to go back on the 19th of June. That's the very latest on that. So no charges for Nigel Evans, who was arrested earlier on today. OK, let's move on to the Sunday Telegraph now. The story that you've picked out here is the one at the bottom. Foreign street rioters we can't deport is their headline there. They're saying the Human Rights Act is used again, they say, to beat Home Office attempts at removal. Now, wasn't there a suggestion that Theresa May would try to strengthen this up?
That is correct, and it has been strengthened in terms of measures that were put before Parliament in April last year. And that was in relation to tackle Article 8, which is the right to fair trial. And the presumption was that they had to show exceptional circumstances why they should not be deported, rather than simply saying, is my family right to be here? They had to show exceptional circumstances. The problem that we've had, and the article's picked up, is that immigration judges have not applied that. And that's why in the royal speech that we'll see later on this week, I think there will be a bill on immigration and deportation, which may well be dealing with that.
To toughen up that particular line. So let's have a look at some of the detail of this particular story, because it's talking about two people that were involved in the riots in 2011, isn't it? Let's take a bit of a zoom in on that.
One was convicted of violent disorder, the other was convicted of burglary, and normally it's the case if you are sentenced to 12 months or more, there's automatic deportation to your country of origin, but they applied Article 8 and they were allowed to stay. And
which is the right to family life, as you say.
That's correct.
What do you think the general feeling is amongst the public, Vincent, on this issue?
I think the public are in tune with the government, and the government's in tune with the public, which is they do want this sort of issue cracked down on. But of course this is a bigger response to UKIP's huge success in the local elections, and the Queen's speech on Wednesday will be a government response to tackling the public's concerns about immigration. And as Rehman says, it will be very much a centrepiece of the Queen's speech, saying we are going to get tough on immigration, not just on this issue, but we're stopping, the government will say it's stopping the access of immigrants to the NHS perhaps, and landlords will have to be tougher on agreements to make sure that people are in fact entitled to be here and they're not illegal immigrants. And that they just turned to ratchet up that narrative, aren't they?
Can I just come back on that? Despite the success of UKIP, the bill that was put forward was in April last year, which looked at this. So it wasn't in relation to what UKIP had achieved in the elections. But it is important that we have to look at a number of factors. One, for example, local authorities could have the presumption of residency, so that, for example, people cannot get on housing lists if they haven't lived there for 2 years or 5 years, which deals with the argument where people come and say, people come into this country, have access to housing before I do. So that deals with that, and the government has already made it quite clear we are dealing with that.
OK, but nevertheless, if this was introduced or talked about as long as a year ago, why is that not having an impact on the voters as far as the Conservatives are concerned? They clearly feel that UKIP answer these issues like immigration or about Europe better than the Conservatives, or those ones that chose to change their minds.
I think you're absolutely right. We have to make sure that our message is clearer. We haven't connected.
So you're doing the right things, you're just not telling them.
No. Of course we are doing the right things, but we have to connect that message more. For example, on immigration, we have put forward a cap that nobody can come into this country or businesses can bring people, more than 20,700 into this country. We've also made it quite clear bogus colleges will be shut. We've also made it quite clear if you can't speak English and you want to be a student in this country, you won't be here. We've also made it quite clear unless you earn 18,000 and above, you will not be able to bring a spouse into this country. So we have brought these measures into place, but we haven't got the message clearly to the connection with the public, and we have to do that, we can do that, and we will do that.
Vincent Moss, I mean, to what extent has the UKIP success at the local elections, and we'll come on to more stories later on connected with this in just a moment, but has it been a wake-up call to all the main parties? Are we going to see all the parties tackling issues like immigration and tackling issues like...
Very much so. I think William Hague is writing in the Telegraph tomorrow, using again the mantra of it's a wake-up call, we're listening, we've got to get our message across better, exactly as you were saying. And I think it's been a huge wake-up call, because everybody expected UKIP to do well, I think, but nowhere near as well as they did. They're going to do even better in the European elections next year, and it is a massive problem for the Conservative Party, because if you continue to be this successful, there is no real way that David Cameron can be Prime Minister at the next election unless he addresses this problem.
I think if we look at the article by Professor John Curtis, who said the issue of UKIP is not simply for the Conservatives, but it's for all main political parties. And I think, all political parties have to reconnect with the public, and it's important to do that. If we don't do that, then we'll see the rise of UKIP even further.
OK, well, we're going to come back to that issue, as I say, later on, so let's not say everything right now. We'll keep a bit in the bank and move on to a story inside the Independent. This is page 2 of tomorrow morning's Independent. Syrian aid in crisis as Gulf states renege on promises.
It's a major problem. We have conferences where countries come towards to the table. For example, in the Kuwait conference, they've pledged $300 million, but the amount that is delivered at the end is not halfway near that. For example, we've had 650 million promised by Arab countries: Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. But out of that 650 million, only 420 million has actually been delivered. And we have a report which says, unless we get that money coming in within the next 2 months, we'll have a situation of hand-to-mouth crisis in Syria, but also the neighbouring countries. You've got 500,000 in Jordan, you've got 300,000 in Turkey, you've got 150,000 in Iraq. Unless these countries actually commit the money which they have promised, then I think we're going to see a real catastrophe in that region.
Well, yes, and I mean, it's an appalling story, every piece of news that comes out of Syria, isn't it? And we've had more news today about further massacres being alleged.
The Independent covers those very well, the Independent on Sunday. Hundreds flee Syrian town after overnight massacre. And it's devoted all on page 2 to it. I think it's fascinating and important that the Independent on Sunday does this. We're very much focused on domestic politics, and all tomorrow's paper's largely full of the Nigel Evans story and also stories about UKIP, but the Indie, quite rightly, I think, is reminding people about what's going on in Syria, which is dreadful, and it's being relegated quite a long way down, certainly the newspapers' news schedules, and I think that's a shame.
And I think on Syria, the international community has now a real choice. Either is there is a military intervention, which I don't think will happen. We're 2 years away from an election, that's not going to happen. Or it provides military assistance to certain rebels, which I think is a real prospect, because if we don't do that, you have certain elements in the opposition, like Jabhat al-Nusra, extreme elements, which are winning the battle to a certain extent and taking public opinion with them. So we have to make sure that we either do that by providing that support, or third option is we stand by and do nothing. We've already seen 50 to 70,000 people dead, so I would say the international community has to come together, lift the weapons embargo, which is put by the European Union and the United States coming together, and arming those moderates who can actually win that battle.
Gentlemen, I'm just going to ask you to pause just for a moment, because we're going to get a little bit more on the developing story this evening that we have told you about. The news of the Tory MP and Deputy Speaker Nigel Evans, who was arrested earlier on today on suspicion of rape and sexual assault. The news we brought you just a few moments ago was that he's been released on police bail, and in fact I think we do have some pictures that we can show you of him leaving the police station in Preston just a short while ago. And let's bring in Becky Johnson, who's there for us. So Becky, remind us of the latest development.
Yes, we just saw Nigel Evans leaving the police station here in Preston, and he has been questioned here for several hours. As we know, he was arrested at his home in Pendleton, a village around 18 miles from Preston here. This morning, he's been questioned all day on suspicion of rape and sexual assault. Two alleged victims being men in their 20s, and those assaults alleged to have taken place at his home in Pendleton, his constituency home, sometime between July 2009 and March of this year. But as you just saw there, he was driven away. He was driven actually out of the back entrance of the police station. Clearly it's very late for him to that we're now getting is that he has been released on bail until June the 19th. So clearly the police will want to speak to him in June, but for now he has been released on bail.
Becky Johnson, thank you for that update. So as Becky was saying there, Nigel Evans